What's up guys, welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be discussing the wind beast and focusing more on a new unit that I built, which is the fire assassin Lexi. So you can see her there in the back line. She's next to Verd. So I was asked why I used Lexi, right? And basically or why I built her, I should say. And the reason is because of this wind beast, right? So I'll show you her skill kit after this raid, and but I just want to show you like just the raid itself first, how much damage you can do. Now this team, right? It can get triple S. It does fail occasionally, alright, but it's not enough that I would not run it because it's energy inefficient, right? It's still efficient enough because it does succeed most of the time. It's a fairly consistent double S. It can get triple S like sometimes as well. I think my highest score at the moment is like 3.8 something million. So I think that's pretty decent for wind beast. Now you want to be able to fight, like I said in the previous video. You want to make sure that your raid score is at least double S, because that's where like it starts getting, well, that's the most efficient in terms of energy to elemental crystal ratio. If you're only farming for homunculus, it doesn't really matter. You'll have to spend more crystals, but like there's like an end goal for that, right? You'll eventually be able to craft him, whereas if you're farming for runes, like rune farming never stops, right? So you want your rune farming to be as efficient as possible. So that's why I'm aiming to get all my teams to like a consistent triple S where possible. If not, then at least double S, like average between double S and triple S. Now the reason to use Lexi, right, is her passive, Deadly Seduction. So this is similar to Diaz and Darian's passives, right? It reduces damage to all other allies, right? Now that's very important, right? Because it will affect how you rune her. Now, in addition though, this ability has a downside in terms of PvE, because it reduces the healing done for both your team and the opposing team. Obviously in PvE, the opposing team doesn't have healing, or at least it doesn't have it in raids, so that's just going to be affecting you. So it's just like a downside. But the wind beast already has a healing debuff from electric shock, right? So electric shock is that yellow debuff that you see. It does continuous damage and it reduces the healing done to your units. Okay, but it doesn't stack with the passive from Lexi. So basically, she's just providing a defense, or like a damage reduction to your other units. Helps them survive and take less damage from the boss. So I guess you could ask, why not use Darian or Diaz then? I mean, if they're providing the same thing, they don't even have like the negative downside. Because the thing is, if you're in the groggy stage, you won't have the lightning effect on you anymore. So if you didn't have Lexi's passive, you would still heal for full power, right? So it's a good way to top up. But I think during the groggy stage, you should have enough time to heal back up to full, right? Even with a healing reduction. So for that reason, I would rather not use Darian or Diaz. And also the main reason though is that Darian and Diaz don't do a lot of damage. They do scale with attack power. Like Darian can scale off HP and do decent damage, but they're like more bruiser kind of damage or lower, right? So but Lexi on the other hand has good multipliers, and she is an attack type. So she scales well with attack power obviously, and she does pretty good damage with her abilities. Now as for her abilities themselves, she does defense break on skill 1. At max skill, it's 75% harmful effect rate, which is good enough. Ideally, I would like it to be 100%. Even if it was like 100% and one turn, I would like that more. But I mean, 75%, 2 turns, it's okay. Just stay in the like win based, because there's only one turn for in terms of doing debuffs on the groggy stage. So basically, the debuffs will only last for one turn, effectively, because he never has he only has one. Once the attack bar goes to full, he will just switch to the next phase, right? So even things like Kung Fu Girl that have a one turn defense break it's fine for this. So yeah, so she's not 100% reliable, but she's a good as like a secondary defense breaker. So you would still want another unit if you can that has a reliable defense break. And secondly, she also does branding on her second skill. So like every other raid base, you want to bring branding where possible, so that you can apply this during the groggy stage and do more damage. You know, it provides a damage boost to everyone in your team. It's a 25% damage increase, and if you combine that with defense break, it adds a lot of damage. So her by herself provides both of those debuffs, and she helps reduce the damage taken by the rest of your team. And that's very important, because if you can reduce the damage that your team is taking, then then it's a lot easier for your Hua-He to heal your team back up to full health, right? And that therefore remove the electric effect, which is what you want to do, especially in the third stage of the boss. So these are the stats, these are the runes. As for the runes, because her passive doesn't affect herself, you want to make her decently tanky. So don't neglect any HP substats. Also, don't neglect any accuracy. Like, try to give her a decent amount of accuracy. You don't need to stack. Like super high accuracy or anything, but give her a little bit where possible. So if you have an accuracy substat, don't enchant it away. She can still make use of it, right? Because you do need her to be decently reliable on applying those defense breaks and branding, especially if you want consistent runs. Now, as for the runes like sets, you don't have to have like Rage Blade or Fatal Blade or anything like that. You can use broken sets if you want. The main thing is get her to the stats that you want, and ideally I would say try to aim for 130 plus crit damage, 85 crit rate, and then like decent tanky substats. I would say prioritize defense a little bit more than HP, but try to keep it fairly even. You don't want to have like a super low HP, but you don't like after a certain point defense will start getting a lot better than HP, right? So once you get to about, I would say about aim for about 17 to 18k HP, and then try to stack defense, preferably like try to get it to like 1k if you can, because you do want her to survive as long as possible. And then at the same time, try not to give up too many attack substats, right? If you can, but you can just rely on like slot 2 and slot 6 attack, and then for the other slots you can try to stack survivability. That's fine as well. She's kind of difficult to rune in my opinion, because she's quite hungry on substats, because she needs like a lot of stuff, right? Even speed, I would try not to neglect it too much. I wouldn't prioritize it like compared to other units, but don't make her like 0 speed if you can. Even for me, I would like to try to give her a little bit faster. The reason to make her a little bit faster is so that she's more likely to do defense break or branding to like at the start of the groggy stage. Now, as for the rest of the units, I would highly recommend Hua-He as your healer, because her heal scales of attack power, and if you're running a lot of units with low base health or like low health pool but high defense, she can top them up a lot easier that way, compared to a healer that does fixed healing like Colleen or Bella. like Hua He is preferable in that case. But if you don't have Hua He, you can use things like Colleen, Bella, Fire Panda, even like Wind Yeti. I used to use Wind Yeti. He was pretty decent. You can use him as well. Anything with a good burst heal, and that's preferably not water. And I did mention the Fire Panda. Don't neglect the Fire Panda because he does have a heal over time. If I can just find him. Okay, so he has heal over time on second skill. And that helps you cushion the amount of damage, or like it helps cushion the continuous effect because they'll apply at the same time, and so hopefully, like, you know, it sort of lessens the effect of that hit damage over time. And also he does do defense break on the first skill, which is quite nice. The third ability, you can do a bunch of debuffs, but nothing that's particularly helpful. It does scale off defense and HP, so he can add a little bit of damage that way, but it's not that, like, the multiplier for this is not very good, in my opinion. So, but he's an alternative. I also, like, if your team's struggling to survive during the third stage, you can even use him as a defense lead. It's not ideal because you want to have as much damage as possible in the end, but first thing to do is survive to kill to make sure you kill the boss to get that extra 500k points, and also to enable you to get at least S, right? Obviously you want to try to get double S, but you have to kill the boss to be able to get S or higher. Now Verd is in the team, but I only recommend you to use Verd if you built him as a damage dealer like I have. So he's got pretty good crit damage and decent attack, right? So unless you're building him this way, if you're building him as a support, I wouldn't bother running him because he's not going to add much damage, and you know, if he's not adding damage, he's not very helpful. Right, the attack bar is nice, but you do need him to contribute decent damage to get your score up higher. Now Trevor, I've been using him for a while. He's sort of like standard, you know, I've shown him in multiple videos, so I'm not going to talk about it too deeply, but obviously he's there for to tank the boss, and he can leech a lot of life and heal himself back up with Vampire. So he's good at finishing the boss at the end, because at the end he's usually quite low. Then he's like a self-buffing unit that can do a lot of burst damage. If he doesn't kill the boss, he'll at least heal himself up a fair bit and allow you to last a bit longer, you know, towards the end of the fight. I'm also using the Wind Homie. So the Wind Homie is there for 2 instances of branding effect from the second and third ability. And the third ability also does defense break, which is quite like a nice bonus, especially because it's a 1 skill. Because, you know, if he manages to move first on the groggy stage, then he can apply both abilities and therefore increase everyone's damage straight away. For that purpose, it is nice to make him fast so that he has better chance of applying it if you can. Otherwise, just give him standard damage dealer runes. Ideally, I would like to put like almost all of these units on fight if I could. So I have to go back and farm more fight runes. But for people who don't have fight runes, you can just use any sort of mix of sets or broken sets that you want, as long as you can reach the stats. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of alternative units that you can consider if you don't have, you know, units like the same units that I have. So obviously Colleen is the alternative healer. I have to take out a unit to show you. Alright, so she's an alternative healer, but the reason I don't like her is because she heals based on a percentage of the health bar, as opposed to like doing a fixed number. Because a fixed number, like Hua He's one, which is scaling off attack power, will heal low total health units more efficiently. Alright, because like you see like a much bigger jump in their health bar when they get healed by Hua He. whereas Colleen's always going to be the same amount of health, no matter what you give her, right, in terms of stats. So usually with Colleen, you'll probably have to run a second healer to have enough healing. So if you have to do that, I would recommend Bella, because Bella does defense break on skill 1, so at least he's providing that debuff for you. Another alternative is Carly. I used to use Carly before I tried out Verd, and she was pretty effective, because the reason I used her is because of her second skill, which ignores defense. And I like ignore defense on these sort of bosses because it helps kill them in the groggy stage a bit faster. She also has a crit lead, which is it can be relevant if you're trying to stack a full fire team and you don't have enough crit rate on everyone. She also does an attack buff, which is nice to have. I would rather her deal damage, but I mean, you can't really change it. She's still pretty strong for this. Another alternative is, believe it or not, Freya. I actually saw this being used by Forest Knight. He's a top player, and he was using it quite effectively. So the way to use her is build her as a damage dealer that is tanky enough to survive until the last groggy stage. The last final phase. All right, in that final phase, he's likely to kill like a unit or two, right? So you want her to survive until then, but make her the weakest unit on your team so that she dies first. And then once she dies, she'll heal up your team for like a large burst healing. I haven't confirmed whether it will like do a full heal while under the electric shock or not. If it does, like, that's amazing. If it doesn't, oh well, it still heals for a big burst. It will pretty much get you topped up along with Hua-He's heal. And then apart from that, just build her as a damage dealer so that she can contribute some damage. Her abilities don't do a super high amount of damage and no debuffs, which is a bit unfortunate. But she's an alternative that you can run. Another alternative unit is Rolk. So I used to use Rolk as well, like way long time ago. He is decent for this because he's got defense break on skill 1. It's not as good as other units that I'm gonna like say Lexy or another unit I'm gonna talk about soon, which is Lukasha, but like every bit helps, right? So here's another possibility that you can use. If he goes nuts with Scratch, like, he can help you do a lot more damage as well, but he is a bit RNG, so he does make the run a bit more volatile. Now a couple more units that I have in storage that you can use, or actually at least one. The first unit is Shiwa. Alright, so for those who don't have Perna, you can use Shiwa as an alternative attack lead. Right, the reason I like attack lead is because it's always going to increase the damage of your units, no matter how much crit rate you have. Right, whereas crit lead, you have to like tune everyone to having that crit lead. Otherwise, you waste otherwise you waste substats, like good rolls on substats. So I prefer attack lead where possible. The limitation, of course, is that it has to be fire units. So you probably have to start your whole team as fire if you do that. But obviously fire is great for this anyway, so you're trying to aim for that anyway. She also does branding on her third ability, so she's another unit that can apply that. Additionally, it also heals herself, right? So it's like an inbuilt leech, and that's very nice for the raid beast, or this raid beast, because like Hua-He quite often won't top you up to full health, especially in the third phase. So having an ability that can lifesteal just helps with survivability. And also her second skill won't be used in this, I'm pretty sure at least, because it's because the boss is immune to this. Like you can't sleep a boss or stun it or whatever. So it means that she'll use either her first skill or third skill, which is really nice because it will mean that she's using her third skill more often. That means she can cool it down a lot more quicker as well, and keep applying that branding effect for you. First ability, doesn't do anything important for this. It's continuous damage, which is, or like the base aren't affected by continuous damage. It does okay damage as well, so she's like a good alternative if you don't have Perna. I used to use her. She was fine. Like, she got me the double S. As for the sets, same as any other damage dealer. Ideally, you would run multiple fight sets for wind based, but if you don't have that, you can just use broken sets or whatever like semi decent set you have. Okay, and the other unit that I wanted to talk about is I have to look at it in Monster Collection, but it is the Fire Harpy, Lukasha. Alright, so Lukasha is slightly similar to Shiwa in that she also provides attack power lead. So if you don't have a Shiwa or you don't want to build one, you can use Lukasha instead, because she also does a fire attack power lead, so you could use that. Other attack power leads you can use things like the Water Monkey King, or Zyros. You probably don't want to use Water Monkey King in this though, but you can use Water Monkey King in other raids. You can also use Rune. Rune is Dark Rakshasa. I believe one of the other Rakshasas also does a attack power lead. So yeah, I like those because it doesn't matter how much crit rate you have, your damage is going to scale with it. Now, as for her abilities, the most important is her first skill. So the first skill is a defense break, and at a max, it's a max harmful effect rate when it's max skilled. So that's really nice, obviously, for raid base, right? For more consistent defense break. And then the second ability, just like a damage ability, third ability is also a damage ability. It does attack bar reduction, but you're not going to get attack bar reduction in the raid base. All her abilities do good damage. She's an attack type, so she scales pretty well with attack. Does a lot of damage with that, and apart from that, I think her HP and defense aren't the best, so you will need to give her some decent runes in terms of survivability. But you can give up a little bit of attack for that if you have to. Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to discuss for now. For the new raid, or not really new, but my newest raid team for wind based. I hope that helps you guys out. For those that don't have Lexy and are looking to build elemental raid teams, I highly recommend Lexy for the wind based. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks guys for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.